Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mind Matters, empowering conversations for public safety professionals, where we'll discuss topics involving wellness and first responders. Join me on this journey of learning from subject matter experts in their various fields of psychology, medicine, leadership, and many more. You can find our show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Let's get into the show. I'm your host, Elizabeth Morris. Hey, good morning to another episode of Mind Matters. Today we have the privilege of speaking with Patrick Traitor. He is a retired Deputy Chief from the Jacksonville Police Department in North Carolina. Patrick has over 27 years in law enforcement, joining the agency in 1995 and rising to the rank of Deputy Chief before retiring now 3 years ago, so December 2022. Beyond his service, he has been an active community member, even taking the stage for a cause, which I had forgotten about this, dancing with the Stars of Jacksonville event to support the Onslow Women's Shelter. He is a dedicated family man. He's married with 2 daughters and really enjoys staying active through physical fitness and martial arts. And today we're going to dive into the silent impact, how law enforcement affects not only officers, but also their loved ones, and exploring the emotional and psychological toll of the profession on those who serve and their families. So welcome, and of course, welcome again to my co-host, Gary Fly. But Patrick, welcome to Mind Matters. How are you this morning?
Very well. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to have you. All right, well, let's dive in. Gary, I think you have some questions to start us off with.
I do, and thanks again to Patrick for being with us. This whole podcast is designed to help highlight the particulars around mental wellness and public safety, to share ideas, give some tips and tactics that people have seen that have been effective and have worked in the past. Excited to have the opportunity to talk with you about
Sure.
Few things, particularly as it relates to the family and the spouses. You had a long, good career there at the Jacksonville Police Agency. As you think back and you think about bringing new people in, I'm curious what advice you would give to spouses as their loved one begins a career in law enforcement. It's going to be a career that maybe they couldn't have imagined, or they'll see things or hear things or be around things that most of us will never be around. So I'd love to just hear your thoughts on advice for the spouse.
Well, I think first and foremost, if the opportunity exists, I think it's important to have a discussion with your spouse prior to maybe selecting law enforcement as your career. I think it's important that whether it's the husband or the wife, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, you do your research, you take time, you do ride-alongs. If you have the opportunity, most agencies offer that. You have the opportunity to speak with officers who are sworn and are doing the job. So I think that's an important piece. And then for the spouses, that's really, from an advice standpoint, that's really a tough one as far as what advice you could give, other than you sort of have a baseline of where your spouse is now in terms of their demeanor, attitude, etc., personality. I think as time goes by, to be aware of maybe changes in your spouse in terms of their attitude or their world perspective, or how they see things or how they view things now, say 5 years into the job versus day one as a rookie. And I think to be supportive, obviously, that's a no-brainer. But to certainly have candid discussions with them if you begin to see these things, if things don't feel right, if some way the relationship is changing and they're maybe becoming more disconnected or not really present in the marriage or the relationship. I think it's important to kind of point that out to them. And now that in and of itself is a tricky thing. And I can tell you from my personal experience, when you allow that job to attach itself to you at a certain level, a lot of times you're not very receptive to people telling you bad things about yourself. I don't necessarily want to say bad things, but critique, if you will. And so that can be tough to do. So, it really is a slippery slope. But I think if the officer himself or herself is really staying connected with who they are and they're kind of keeping tabs on themselves, a lot of that can be avoided, because if they're seeking counseling or they're trying to find outlets to discuss what might be bothering them, instead of just putting it in a jar and putting a lid on it and then suppressing it, so to speak.
And it's not very interesting. Yeah, I like what you alluded to in the beginning is knowing more up front too, for the spouse to know more, to experience that. I don't know if you meant the spouse doing ride-alongs or not, or if you were speaking more to the person going in, but why not both, right? So they really do get an opportunity to be with someone, to hear about the long hours and the shift work and recognizing that stress is to come, to best prepare both people, the one in the profession and the one that is directly impacted at home.
Yeah. I think I think it's super important for that support network. And I think you and I spoke briefly a while back about, before I retired, the agency was beginning to get off the ground a program for spouses, in which spouses of officers, newer officers, could come in and hear from seasoned officers and then their spouses about what their journey has been like, and sort of the pitfalls and the things to look for. I think that kind of program is paramount, because, all across law enforcement, the word you hear now from agencies is retention, right? Retention, keeping people. And retention goes beyond pay and benefits. Retention goes to healthy work environments and healthy relationships within your agencies and healthy police officers. In my 27 plus years, there have been many officers that left the job because they couldn't do it any longer. It wasn't because they didn't want to be a cop. It's that mentally they couldn't do it any longer. And so I think having programs like that, or whether they're formal or informal, if it's just one wife saying, "Hey, ladies," or if it's, I shouldn't just say ladies, husbands, if it's, guys saying, "Hey, let's get together, let's have these conversations, or let's, have dinner or lunch and just talk," I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, real quick, Patrick, I think, since you're a mountain man now, and I'm noticing that beard of yours, I think you're scratching on it when you're talking. Pull away a little bit.
Fix these. I had to dig these out, man. These are old as all get out.
I mean, all right. They look good. They look professional, but I'm hearing and I'm like, oh, now you're
sorry about that.
Jefferson in the mountains. Got that beard going. No, I think those are some great thoughts, Gary.
Yeah, I had actually, you mentioned in there, if somebody appears to be disconnected in the marriage, and that really plays back to a theme we've heard on many of these podcasts, which is if an officer is starting to feel that disconnect, or others around them, those who love them, are starting to talk about that, that's a real tell, right? That they may need to reach out and get a little bit of help.
No, definitely. So, I mean, I'll be frank. I mean, I'm on marriage number 2. And so, while my first marriage ended for a variety of reasons, as I reflect now, because if I can get into it a bit, my wife now, she wasn't really shy about pointing out my issues or my attitude or my whatever. And so that was a bit of a bumpy spot for me, because, when I got married for the second time, nothing really had changed in me, in terms of my perspective. And so all those things that I had in my first marriage, I just brought along with me in my second marriage. And there was a time when, and she has been super supportive throughout, but there was a time when she said, "Here's the deal. Either you figure this out, or I'm not sure this is going to work." And it wasn't so abrupt. It wasn't that she was just being hateful or uncaring. Is that she had done all she could do, and I had left her with no other options. She was at her wit's end. And so I had to do some real waking up and some real soul searching and, taking a hold of myself, if you will, and start making some corrective action. So,
Well, and Gary, you did talking about with Ed Beltran, really having those hard conversations, that's what's going to move things along into a positive way. So the theme continues not only with the stressors and the wellness and the resiliency, but also we've got to push forward as people that love and care about you to say something's up. I need you to get help, and we need to sit down and talk about it and not dance around it for it to become even much more of a bigger problem.
No, absolutely. It's important to get it before it's too far down the tracks. Yeah.
And Elizabeth, it occurred to me also from some previous podcasts that one of the challenges for that officer receiving the feedback is to make sure they don't attach a stigma to getting help, right? That they don't think that that's a sign of weakness. In fact, it's a sign of health and strength. And I don't know if you have thoughts around that, Patrick.
No, absolutely. In fact, when I was preparing for this, that was one of the things that I had jotted down as I was making just some notes, just writing my thoughts down. That's tremendous weakness. I mean, you know, police officers, you know, they teach you to confront danger. They teach you to do dangerous things. And so in BLET, they create this being that is designed to go out on the street and go into the dark places and face horrible things and risk their lives to protect others. And so we're good at turning on that switch, or we're installing that on switch, you know, but we're not so good at the off switch. And part of that off switch is that understanding that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to be weak. And cops are fixers. You know, we fix things. It's by our job. We fix things. And the personality that gets into the job, which I'm sure you guys can speak to more than I, the types of personalities that go into that career, they're fixers. And so it's hard when you're a fixer to admit to yourself that you're broke in that moment, you know, and then to be able to go in and say, you know, I need help. It's a tough thing for a police officer to do, because there is a stigma, but I think that stigma is beginning to dissolve now. I think it's becoming more acceptable. I think other officers, and to me, that's what it really takes to get rid of that stigma, is for other officers to, whether it be in a peer support group setting, to be frank and talk about their struggles and talk about the things that have been difficult for them to navigate through. That's what helps other officers go, well, man, you know, it's okay for me to ask for help too.
I agree. And we're seeing that. I agree with you. I think that there's been a shift. It is shifting, even in leadership, when these younger officers come in and they're seeing that their leadership is saying this matters. Like, it's not only your physical fitness and physical abilities and tactical abilities, but it's the mental piece that we want to take care of. And I'm doing it too. They're setting that example and implementing peer support teams, implementing, you know, annual wellness check-ins or what have you. I mean, there's just like a plethora of things, but yeah, I agree. It's a breath of fresh air to see it being talked about even more, because unfortunately, like, I don't think you got that as much as a lot of the officers are now, because it is more acceptable. They want to be asked. They want their chief or supervisor or whomever to say, how are you feeling? And that's like, yeah, I kind of had a rough weekend, but I'm good. Let's.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I agree 100%. I think there's I know it was powerful for me to have my superior officers, you know, ask how I was doing and you know, throughout my career. So I agree. I think it does kind of allow that officer to kind of let down that wall, so to speak, and maybe seek help if they need it. I mean, understanding, and I'll be the first, you know, I've sought that help. I've had to go and sit down and unpack things with a professional. And what I took from that was, the more I understood why I felt like I felt, the easier it was to navigate through it. You know, and so for me, that was tremendous. And it's trying to get the other officers to see that it's not about that you're weak or that you're mentally disturbed or you have some mental issues. And of course, you know, that may be the case, you know, that happens, that comes from these discussions, but it's just about having somebody to tell you, you know what you feel right now is 100% normal, based off your experience, or what you're coming to me with, or what you've experienced, or what you've seen, what you've had to go through. How you feel is normal. And this is how I'm going to help you, or this is how you can help yourself navigate through those feelings.
Yeah, that validation in itself. I know our psychologists particularly after a critical incident, whether it be a shooting or something else, that it is like that validation. You can see the shoulders just kind of go down, and they're like, thanks. So you don't think I'm correct because I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that person is not on this earth anymore because I'm okay. That's okay to say that. Absolutely. That's a normal reaction.
Yeah.
I think, more and more of that is you need that validation.
Yeah.
You deserve that
Yeah.
validation because you've gone into a career where you're protecting all of us, and then who's protecting you and who's telling you that it's okay to be thankful that you are alive. It is, I mean, we're humans. Like I'm going to protect me. You're going to protect yourself and your family. And
that's tough. Yeah.
and
Definitely.
his wife being in, Gary, you may not know, but his wife is a nurse practitioner. She's in that care role as well. And I don't know, I think that's really amazing and speaks volumes about her that she kind of held your feet to the fire a bit.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then what the realization that I came to was, a lot of things that I came to realize, but was that I was incredibly selfish. I felt entitled to my mood. I felt entitled to my attitude, right? Because I have this job, and it's got all this stress, and it's got all these things, and it's certainly, as I made rank and promoted, with each promotion is more responsibility, which means more stress. And so I'm like, I'm entitled to this. I have a right to be this way. And here I'm married to someone who's at that time, she was working on her master's, but she was working in critical care. I mean, she did critical care in ICU, and then she was a flight nurse. And so, she spent all of her energy helping me. So the reciprocation probably wasn't there as much as it should have been. And that's me. That's 100% me, And so I think those are the kind of things I think gets lost. They get lost. You get so consumed with yourself and what you're dealing with that you forget what's around you. Other people need you. And as we spoke about early on, to be engaged, to be there. And I know that there were times when I just would come home and I just wanted quiet. I just wanted to sit down. I didn't want to have to listen to anybody else's problems. And, it doesn't work that way. I was a dad. I was a husband, and so, I definitely didn't do things the right way early on, or at least early on in this relationship, and so again, back to what I said about her kind of giving me the wake up call,
and really she was saying, I want you to think more about you. Like you're being selfish in a way when really I want you to be selfish, an adaptive way of getting better long term. Like focus on what's going on. And I mean, I can imagine too. I mean, she's seen critical care. I mean, she's seen a lot of horrible things on a daily basis. So I can imagine that. And ultimately you've done it. I will say, knowing you as I have, there is a peace about you. There is a calm about you that maybe some of it's from retirement and living up in the I think, Gary's, we've got some questions for you on that, but kind of what you were speaking to, you've not deflated in any way. I think you've just become more human and comfortable in your own skin and not feeling like you've got to fight. There's not a battle to fight anymore, internally, externally. So I think it's cool to see that really, there is more light about you now.
Oh yeah, definitely. The stress is, wow, that's gone. I mean, it's just not there. Like, to your point, that I'm not in that environment or in that world anymore. I mean, so it's definitely much more peaceful internally. No one in life is without stress, but it's just the magnitude and what level it is. It's nowhere like it used to be. The old habits are there, but the stress is not.
So you said a couple of things that I thought were really powerful. You said the more you understood why you felt the way you did, it made it easier or even possible for you to navigate those feelings. You then led into this idea of, hey, I was being selfish, right? I wanted to hold on to these moods. I had a right to these things. And then you sort of wrapped up that part of the discussion by saying early in your career, you didn't do things maybe the right way. And so I'm wondering if there's a thread there, if there's some ahas that you could share with officers wherever they are in their career that can help them sort of learn what you did, because it's just your viewpoint is so thoughtful and mature around these things that it really struck me the way you phrased things and thought about things.
Yeah, I think early on in my career, I wanted to be the best police officer I could. I wanted to work in these certain divisions. I mean, I gravitated toward the high stress stuff. I wanted to be on, at that time, the unit was called a street crimes unit, which was a uniform crime suppression unit that just got focused into the high crime areas. I wanted on that. And so I, worked hard and did the things I was supposed to do as a regular patrol officer. And then from there, I went into vice and narcotics for a number of years and lived that life, which is incredibly hard on a relationship because it's crazy hours and it's crazy stuff. And so I think what I didn't do was take enough time for myself. Maybe I didn't take a lot of time off because I just was I was always chasing. I was always wanting more, and I wanted to be that guy. You know what I mean? That guy that was always out there, the guy that you'd always count on. And I think that was that was, I don't want to call it a regret. Something I wish I'd have done differently in my career was take more time for myself. And that would be the advice I'd give any young officer today. Your career is a marathon, not a sprint. 30 years is the mark, right? If you want to retire, that's the mark for the state of North Carolina, right? To get full retirement. But you got 30 years. I came out of the gate a full sprint. And because the guys I went to rookie school with were doing the same thing. So I'm like, we're all doing this together. We're in it. And so looking back, I should have taken more time. I should have went a little bit slower. I feel like now.
Yeah.
I think great point. Taking the water breaks. I just did my first 5K with my brother. He ran the whole time. I did not run the whole time. But again, that was my marathon. I wasn't sprinting, but it is taking the water break, taking the moment to breathe and go, wow, that was a day. Maybe this weekend I need to just, go watch a movie, take my wife or take my kids somewhere. And that's a great take home. Career particularly, that it is not a sprint because you're going to burn yourself out. And I think you realize that we want people to stay in this. We need law enforcement. We need our public safety professionals, and we don't need them burning out in that first 5 years.
Yeah, no, I agreed. And the same thing with promotion. I regret not spending more time in rank than I did. I mean, I would be promoted and there would be an opening. And if there was always a time requirement to submit, but if I did. I never, because, that's what you're supposed to do. And I look back and when I got to the rank of deputy chief, I regret not being a captain longer because there was so much that I think I missed out on experience wise, so as a deputy chief, there were times when I kind of had to play a little catch up, because I didn't spend enough time at a rank. Now, and that's for me. I mean, it's relative. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. So, other folks may, that may be good for them. But, I was fortunate enough, blessed enough to be selected each time I participated in a promotional process. And again, that would definitely be some advice. If you're a sergeant now, enjoy being a sergeant for a while. Just enjoy it. Get all the experience you can. It just makes you more competitive when you do promote for that next rank,
That's a good point.
I think both of those are excellent, and they kind of tie together, right? Take time, slow down a little bit, don't get such a rush, and take time for yourself. So I think that also provides a nice segue. So we were talking about early career folks, and that was some great advice for them. How about for folks that maybe you're bumping up against retirement? You've gone through the transition over the last couple of years, and I don't know if you prepared for that, if you feel like you could have prepared differently, or what sort of advice might you give folks sort of at the later end of their career?
Certainly, make sure you're retiring for the right reason. I feel like, if you're, fed up, angry, bitter, and you're just I'm out, I'm done, you're going to have some regret. Because I can tell you, I didn't retire because I was angry or bitter. I was ready, to move on. I was ready to kind of put law enforcement in the rearview mirror and just be a regular guy again. But even with that perspective, there were a lot of aspects of the job that I missed dearly. Elizabeth and I were speaking when I first got on, just informally, the relationships. That has been the biggest adjustment to this point. And still today, 2 years out, I still miss those relationships incredibly. I was the tactical team commander for a number of years. I can tell you, I mean, you ask my wife, I miss those guys like I can't tell you. I can't tell you. And that goes for all of the relationships that I have. But I think and some of that is self-inflicted because I moved here permanently 2 days after I retired. So a piece of advice that I would give that if you and your family have plans that post-retirement, you're going to move to another location or you're going to do something different out of the area. I wish I had stuck around a little while and let some of the dust settle, instead of packing up the last bit of stuff I had and heading west. Mm-hmm. Because when I got up here, my youngest is up here at Appalachian State. And so, that was certainly awesome to be up here and while she's up here, but it wasn't enough. About 6, 8, 9 months in, I was really missing my friends. And, we can text and talk and that kind of thing, but it's not the same because, for some of those folks for my entire career, I saw them every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on Saturdays and Sundays. But I saw them every day. And then in a blink of an eye, they're gone. They're just not around me anymore. And that's been a tough adjustment. I don't miss the stress of the job. I don't miss, all that stuff. But I do miss those relationships.
Just being even local, that resonates with me. That's a good point. I mean, you hear people say, after a major life event, don't make any other changes within a year. People have said divorce and particularly for women, which is comical. Don't cut your hair. Like you want to make a big change, don't do it. Right. What do? We cut our hair. But the same kind of thing, like you said, that's been your home for how many years, and maybe you're not meeting around the water cooler anymore, but if you're still local, you're running into them maybe at the grocery store doing something like that. But it wasn't a wrong choice. It was the best choice for you and your family, but it is something. Yeah, that makes sense. That probably made you rip that Band-Aid off real quick. Yeah. You are still very much involved in FBI NA and then also doing things like this. You have so much wealth of knowledge and experience to immerse yourself as much or as little as you want. I think in the future still you add a lot of but NA, Gary, he went through the National Academy. So that's actually, I guess, when I first met you is through.
Yeah, I think, because we had just started contracting your services, I think, when I was in hiring. So it's been at least 2010. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
All right. So, maybe sooner, but
telling a lot of your colleagues are, a lot of your close friends are getting near to that retirement.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts that kind of come to mind, as you're talking to some of them, sharing experience? You mentioned something before we got on live that, you were kind of giving some suggestions to a former colleague of yours as he prepares for retirement. Yeah. What were some of those words of wisdom?
Yeah, I think, and certainly some people stay past retirement for a variety of reasons, but if you're able, and there are things that you have to be sure of, and it has to make financial sense for you and your family. But if you're able, I think you go ahead and retire and enjoy life while while you can. Life is short, that's cliche, but it's a fact. You don't, and I use the example of my mom who passed away, in 2022. She worked right up until 6 months before she passed away, and she retired. And I would tell her, Mom, what's left to do? You're in a position in which you can retire and live comfortably, and there's nothing else to accomplish. But for whatever her reasons were, she stayed, and when she finally retired, she had 6 months, and that was it. I just retire, enjoy life. You've earned it. Especially, and I don't want to make law enforcement sound like it's the pinnacle of careers, because there are plenty of other careers that are high stress and are high value. You give 30 years to this job, and I will tell you, it takes far more than it gives. In my opinion, it's my experience. It takes more than it gives. And so, if you come to the time when you're able to walk away. And just go and be a regular guy. I had no problems being a regular guy. The habits are there, the things that because you don't those things don't go away from you. The training, the way you look at a structure or the way you sit in a restaurant, those things stay. But the other parts, I just assimilated right back into regular life, so to speak. But
doing as a regular guy, you shared some things earlier that you're kind of stepping more into the cooking, although you were doing that before.
Yeah, since my wife, she works, and I say stay at home. I am involved with a horse rescue here off the Parkway, and so I do that 2 or 3 times a week. Yeah, I mean, I just assume those housekeeping roles, if you will. I cook dinner each night, and I do laundry, I vacuum floors, I do all that stuff. So, and happy to do so. She works all day and she has a very demanding job. So she should be able to come home to a meal on the table and not have to worry about cooking or any of that, cleaning, any of that stuff. And she does help and all that stuff, participate.
Oh, you're just afraid she's going to listen to this and think.
No, I don't want to give the impression that she does nothing, but yeah, I kind of do those things and, keep myself occupied with whatever.
Yeah, you made me think of a quote I heard from a person who said, you want to retire in a way that allows you to enjoy the youth of your senior years. And I thought
Absolutely.
that made a lot of sense.
No, you nailed it. That's exactly what it is. I mean, law enforcement, if you get into it early enough, it gives you a unique opportunity to retire relatively young. I retired at 53, in relatively good health. And so, I'm able to do what I want to do. I go hiking, that kind of thing, mountain biking, kayaking, all that stuff that you do up here. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a neat story. And to your point, you put in 30 years, it probably aged you 45 years, but
yeah.
It's nice that you've been able to make that transition. And I really do believe the very practical points you gave, both for early career folks and later stage folks, are just super tactical, tangible things that make a lot of sense. And I know that listeners will get some good contemplative ideas out of this, but also some real tactical things.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important to not let the job define who you are. If this job will eat as much as you wish to feed it. If you want to feed it your marriage, it'll eat it. You want to feed it an anniversary, it'll take it. You want to feed it your kid's very first softball game, it'll take it. And it'll attach itself to you and it'll become everything to you. Trust me. So it is important at the jump to set boundaries and to separate. This is Officer Traitor over here, and this is Dad, and this is husband. And you keep them separated as much as you possibly can. And you find hobbies outside of police work. You find hobbies that have nothing to do with law enforcement.
I think that's great advice. I think that's a wonderful kind of final thought. I mean, are there any other, thoughts or advice as we kind of come to a close? This has been very much an insightful conversation. I appreciate your time, but are there any other nuggets of wisdom?
Wow, I don't think anything I said today is a whole bunch of wisdom, but it's now I can't think of anything, Elizabeth, to be honest. It's just to keep things in proper perspective. You have to separate the two. You have to have a dual personality in a good way. There has to be that police officer, and then there has to be that regular guy. Like I said a while ago, that's a dad, that's a husband, and you got to keep them separated. You just have to, or else it's not going to work out well.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to you for all of the years that you have worked to protect Jacksonville and your family and community. And I'm just excited for where you are now and all the things that you're saying, and just really appreciate you taking the time to share those experiences on the job and then outside. But thank you for your service and being here with us today.
No, thank you very much. It's truly an honor. Like I said, I've watched a few episodes, and you guys have some really impressive people on. So I'm honored to be a part.
Well, now you're one of them. So we'll have a good rest of the day.
You do the same. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Take care.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Mind Matters. Please give us your thoughts, and if you like this episode, feel free to share it with others. You can also find more content and choose to follow us on our Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at the FMRT Group. Thanks, and we'll see you next time on Mind Matters.